Real talk, raw faith, stay unfiltered. Welcome back to Echoes Unfiltered. I'm your host, Sam Stratton. Today I've got a brother joining us whose story carries weight. Not just because of what he's done, but because of who he is. Nick Polce is a U.S. Army Special Forces veteran, a Wisconsin guy, a husband, a father, and someone who knows what service looks like long after the uniform comes off. This conversation isn't about politics. This is about leadership, faith, trauma, and the real journey a lot of us walk through, but rarely talk about out loud. Nick has lived a life of service in combat, in his community, and in his family. And I'm honored to have him here today. So settle in. This is going to be raw, real, and unfiltered, just the way we do it. Well, let's get into it.
Hello, it's Nick.
Hey, Nick. Sam Stratton.
Sam, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great, man. Thank you for taking the call and for joining us here on Echoes Unfiltered. Really looking forward to hearing your story and everything that shaped you into who you are today. So, well, let's get into it.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess to start off, what I'd like to get is a little bit of your background. And for people who don't know you, who is Nick Polce?
Sure. Well, Nick is blessed to begin with. Grew up in a large family in the Northeast. And so I was just having a wonderful childhood. Again, I said blessed multiple times during this interview because I truly believe that.
Amen.
Mother and father that loved us and did everything they could to set us up for success as we grew out of the house and moved down and became adults.
It's great to have parents who you know have your back.
Yes, and sometimes you don't, at least for me, you know it in the moment. You leave, right? In my case, I joined the Army.
Yeah.
And then when you're gone, you come back and like the mid-20s, you're like, wow, yeah, my mom and dad were special.
Yeah.
And then you thank them and you really recognize the sacrifice that they put in to be able to allow you to have some success in your life. So
yeah.
Truly thankful.
Yeah. Good parents are definitely a blessing. Well, you mentioned a little bit, you were there until you joined the military. Well, what pulled you into the military? Was there a specific moment or influence?
Oh, yeah. So I was a senior in college, 9/11, and mostly, like most college kids, I'll use the stereotype here, sleeping until the last minute, and then hustling, throwing on some sweatpants, right?
Yeah.
And then running over to class before you're late for the teachers, marking late. Well, we got to the building where the class was at, and there was a flyer on the door. Doors were locked, and it said class was canceled. Go back to your room. And like, it's never happened, So what happened? And then by the time we walked back across campus, and then the buzz started to come out for the different kids. Hey, did you hear what happened? This, that, and the other thing. Turn on the show, news, and of course it's plastered. Second tower was hit. And around that time, the tower started to come down. And for me, that was a pivotal moment in my life. And I wanted to join the military, and especially to get into the U.S. Army Special Forces so that I can go overseas and take the fight to the enemy.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said Special Forces. I mean, I've seen a lot of guys coming out of high school or coming out of college that are going to join the military and say they're going to be a SEAL or they're going to be a Green Beret. And normally when people say that, you're like, yeah, okay, dude. Because it's a very small percentage.
Yes, it is it's a difficult, yes.
You mentioned the Special Forces, and so I know this, but for our listeners, what branch and unit were you with, and what was your job?
Sure. So U.S. Army Special Forces is a specific unit in the Army. Oftentimes, you hear it on the news or you read it in books, and there'll be a transposition of Special Operations and Special Forces into one group, and then it gets confusing. So Special Operations, umbrella term for the different organizations within the military. Special Forces, specific to the Army, more commonly known as the Green Berets.
And can you walk us through how that training went when you joined, and how long were you in before you went to the Special Forces? Because I know when I was in, and I don't know if it was the same when you went through this, but when I was in, I remember after I went through, well, at the time we called it PLDC, Primary Leadership Development Course, that towards the end of that course, we had some people from Special Forces come in and say, hey, you guys are NCOs now, and kind of give their pitch. Is that where you met it, or was this something you went in planning to do?
No, so I took a little different path. So right after 9/11, Donald Rumsfeld decided that the military, specifically the Army, didn't have enough folks within the special operations community because he viewed this war differently. It was going to be more tailored. It was going to be a smaller footprint. It wasn't going to necessarily be a large invasion of other countries because it was a focus on terrorist groups as opposed to one individual country.
Okay.
So as a result of that, the Army rolled out a program called the 18 X-ray program. In the past, in the 80s, they had one. In the 60s or in Vietnam, they had one. And what it allowed one to do is you could sign a contract that put you into a pipeline. And that pipeline had a lot of testing, both physical, psychological, emotional, academic, etc. And as long as you went through and passed all the tests, achieved all the standards, at the end of that, you had an opportunity to earn the Special Forces tab and the Green Beret. And so that's the path I went at that time. I was one of the earlier individuals to take advantage of the 18 X-ray contract. And so went in with no guarantees. Like if you failed out, if you couldn't pass one of the events or you couldn't pass certain standards, then you would get moved into what's called needs of the Army. And the Army would decide where you went if you were unsuccessful in earning that and making it through all the different training, testing. It usually lasted, depending on your MOS. So for folks that weren't in the military, in the Army, MOS is your specialty. And for me, it was the 18 Echo, which is Special Forces Communications Sergeant. So in the Special Forces community, there's 4 different MOSs for NCOs, and each of them have a length of training. And so depending on which one you were selected for during that pipeline, you could be anywhere from 2 to 3 years from the beginning of the training to the end.
So was communications something you chose, or was that a position that was just there?
So when we went into, and I forgot at which part, you had an opportunity to put down your wish list. So, hey, these are 4 choices, and you could rank them 1 through 4. And so when I did my wish list, I think I had Echo was either 1 or 2. And so it just happened to line up that during my class at that time, they said, okay, yeah, we need you going to be an Echo. And I got into the Echo program.
Wow. Awesome. Can you walk us through a deployment or a mission in your career that really stuck with you?
Sure. Well, I've been the first one. I went to Iraq in 2006. So get out of the Q course, which is the abbreviation for the Special Forces Qualification course, called the Q course. So after, again, about 2 years of training, we're ready to go. We signed up to do a certain mission. We wanted to go overseas. We wanted to take the fight to the enemy. And so everybody's graduating and itching to go, right? We're tired of training. So I got to 10th group. We spent several months in a pre-train up, which is now you're with your team. Now you're doing specific team training. You're learning the ropes, so to speak, as the first guy, as a newbie on the team, right? And getting ready to leave. So we do our first deployment in 2006, and we're not even on the ground maybe 3 months. And there were 2 things that happened, which were eye-openers for me. There was an incident in Haditha, Iraq, in around April of 2006, and then the same thing around the same time, you had guys from 10th group that were in combat mission in and around, I think it was Baghdad or one of those areas. And at both times, the guys did nothing wrong. They did what they were trained to do. And the propaganda from the enemy was so quick and so powerful that before the missions, before you even get back from the missions and you had a debrief and you had an opportunity to kind of talk about what happened, there was already this narrative that Marines were committing war crimes. Green Berets were harming folks in certain locations, and it was 100% false. But the propaganda was powerful, and of course, our legacy media, not necessarily on the side of the good guys, right? Not necessarily on the side of the U.S. military.
Right.
So the result of that was the commander at the time of the forces in Iraq ordered a stand down. So this is in an active combat zone, and he ordered a stand down, and he ordered retraining. Now, mind you, the U.S. military is the most highly trained, the most ethical, the most moral unit that the world's ever seen. And we go out of our way to do everything possible to put our lives on the line before enemy, before civilians, before anything else. Right?
I take it this wasn't a Special Forces commander.
No,
okay.
It was not. No. So this was the individual in charge of the whole Iraq
okay.
Mission, right?
Yep.
So he orders the safety stand down, and for us guys, and for me in particular, I'm thinking, why are we getting retrained? And we have to go through and watch a PowerPoint on morals and ethics as it relates to war fighting. And you talk about
this is so Army. It's crazy. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and no. It's for guys, for me, and for the rest of us that joined, right after 9/11, that went through the 18 X-ray program, that were ready to go. We were like, what is going on here? Why are we in an active combat zone going through a PowerPoint retraining?
Yeah.
And then once everybody clicked through the PowerPoint slide, and then the team sergeant would sign off, and the ODA commander would sign off, and it would go all the way up to the battalion, et cetera, et cetera. Then it was almost like then the general turned the combat arms back on. I was like, all right, guys, good to go now. And so that to me was the first eye opener, like a vision of what the military should be doing, and then the actual reality on the ground. And there were a couple other incidents during that trip, but that was, to answer your question, that was a popping of the myth. I would say the best way to describe it, of the military operating versus how it actually operates.
Now, did you say this was in 2006?
2006, yeah.
In Haditha?
So it was one incident in Baghdad, and there was one incident in now I draw a blank on it, up in, I'll remember it again. I think it was Haditha up north. There was a Marine infantry unit, and they did great things. And unfortunately, propaganda was terrible.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just thinking when I got to Iraq was fall of 05, because I was there 05, 06.
Okay.
And I was in Ramadi. That's when it was really kicking off.
Yes.
And
yes.
It was pretty white knuckled, I will say, for 3/4 of that deployment. And I remember like the last quarter towards the end of 06, things started getting better, and they made us start, obeying traffic laws and stuff, which we thought was ridiculous. But we had been there in the height of the fighting. So I can understand if you were there in 06, how rules of engagement had changed. At least for the Anbar province, what I noticed when the war really shifted, how it was being fought. And things at that point had gotten a lot better. Not good, but better.
So did you think in an area that you were at, right? So you saw some of the most heavy combat, because that was the area where the insurgency started from, and that was where Saddam had his loyalists in that area, right? That was, and so you also saw a change in rules of engagement, because that's a whole other tangent we could go down. Right now, right?
Yeah. Well, I digress. We're here to talk about you, not me. They already heard my story. What can you say the military taught you about leadership that you still use today?
A couple things. So one of the first ones is leaders eat last. So the concept of putting the folks that you are in charge of, putting their needs and their wants and their cares ahead of your own.
Mm-hmm.
That's one. The second one is the idea of mentorship. Of as an individual, one of the things that the teams do very well in the community is preparing the next generation to lead, right? So you get to back to my story, you come out of the Q course, I get to a team, and you're assigned a junior, which is your first newer guy on the team.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a senior, another person that has the same MOS as you. And that person's job is to teach you, mentor you, and show you how to be a Green Beret on a team, and how to lead in the community. And then after about 3 years, that senior moves up, usually to a team sergeant position or potentially a intelligence role or something like that. And then you now, as the junior, become the senior, and it's your job now to mentor the next person.
Mm-hmm.
And so that concept of mentorship and taking care of and preparing that next person to succeed stuck with me since then. And it's something that carried forward, especially in the corporate world, because that's not always, at least my experience, that's not always the way that some folks will view their roles as in prepping and mentoring, because they turn into, sometimes it can be viewed as, well, if I teach this person too well how to do this job, then they may replace me.
Yeah.
Right. So those are a couple of things that I would share with you related to leadership that I've learned and try to apply going forward.
Perfect. What would you say was the hardest part about coming home and taking the uniform off?
The loss of the community, the loss of the family, that environment, because oftentimes, as you know, in your world, folks that have shared a high stress experience or have shared an experience that caused you to bond, it's hard to then have conversations, or it's hard to relate to some folks that have not been in those type of situations.
Yeah, very much so. Right.
So leaving the community now, you got some guys that you spent a lot of time with together, done a lot of crazy things together, and now you're all learning. And you're still friends, you still talk to them, but it's just not the same because you're not seeing them every day. You're not going on trips with them. You're not training together. And so that to me was the hardest part of walking away when I got out.
Yeah. Yep. I completely understand that. I did, for the listeners out there know, they just heard a few weeks ago, the podcast come out. But we did have a little get together at my cabin, and I got, I don't know, maybe about a dozen of us that were in Iraq together, just to come for the weekend, for a day or for a night or for 2 nights. And we just hung out, had the campfire, broke bread, and it was just so therapeutic to just sit down with the guys again. And even some of these guys I haven't talked to in almost a decade, and it was like I just talked to them last week. That is the type of relationship and bond you can get with people in the military. And it's awesome. I wouldn't change it for anything.
Yeah, and like you said, 10 years, 12 years, 15 years, you haven't seen them, and all of a sudden it's like you just pick up where you left off.
Yeah, and usually it's ripping on them, because that's all we do is rip on each other.
Yeah, that's right.
Good times. That's how you know we love each other.
It keeps you humble.
It does.
It keeps you humble.
Nobody can keep you humble like your brothers in arms.
Oh, ain't that the truth?
Yeah. Were there any dark or difficult seasons, or the struggle with, like, who am I now, when you left?
Sure. Definitely a loss of identity. For that, I was in a little over 11 years, and you have a sense of mission, you have a sense of purpose. So there was definitely a struggle with loss of identity. I didn't have any dark or depression type episodes. There was certain sadness when a friend of yours that was still active or went to another organization didn't come home, or came home but had certain trauma,
right.
To, for example, losing a leg or something like that, and so there's a different sadness with that, because what he or she is going through, right? Got off the truck, or I went this way, this guy went that way, and how much fate, luck, God's will is in people coming home safe, people coming home injured, and people not coming home at all. So those are some of the bad times.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, let's talk a little bit about service after service.
Sure.
At what point did you feel that tug to serve again in a different way? And then I'd like you to talk a little bit about what your goals are right now and where you'd like to serve.
Sure. So for me, it was the birth of my son had changed my life. I think after the military, after serving under both Republican and Democrat in the community, it still got me questioning foreign policy, got me questioning a lot of the actions that I thought were done for one reason and they weren't. I talked earlier about that first trip, about the myth, a vision of what a Special Forces soldier is and doing overseas versus sometimes the reality that we run into. And then, fast forward to getting out, and talked a little bit earlier about trying to find your way and find my way. And I owned a business at the time. We were doing security consulting. We're doing training. And then when Nick came along, that changed my outlook and my perspective. And I was like, okay, I gotta do what I can to set him up for success and his generation up for success. And that's what ultimately lit a fire in me to go run. I ran for Congress in 2018 in Wisconsin. And then that now is rolled forward, which I'm 2026 here. Well, I just did. Just launched a campaign for lieutenant governor here in the great state of Wisconsin as well. So my why is my son for why I'm trying to get back involved and for him.
Fight the battles so they don't have to.
That's exactly right.
Right. I get it. And I also, I'm over here shaking my head up and down. Yes, when you're talking about how life changes when your child is born and you meet this little being that you created, and now you're like, okay, what do I do now? It's just a total new love.
Yes. And exactly right. I was like, oh my goodness, I'm responsible for a life now. I'm not just me being selfish anymore.
Yeah. Well, how did that idea first show up to get into politics? Now, you mentioned your son and how things were going.
Yep.
Was it a conversation or just your frustration? Or like a somebody's got to do something type of moment?
No, it wasn't a conversation. It's more of life experience and then learning during those life experiences. So the time in the community, during that multiple trips, where I was part of the GWAT generation. And we weren't really, and I mean, it lasted, quote, roughly 20 years. Now, I wasn't in that long. We went from roughly 2001 to 2021. And think about, what did we accomplish for our country, for our people during that time? Well, we spent a lot of money.
Yes,
we had some of the greatest Americans come home injured, not come home at all, or come home with injuries that didn't show up till much later, like your emotional injuries, like your psychological injuries that can be worse than a physical injury because how it affects you, when it affects you, how it affects your interactions with your family and your friends. And right, it's not just one person that's injured. It's now it has the second and third order effects. Marriages are struggling. You talked about your kids, my child, the interactions with your kids. And so it's like, why? Why do we do that? And so there's a lot of reflection. There was a lot of learned experiences during that time, including the great financial crisis we witnessed. And some of the smartest people that I knew growing up were really hurt by that. And so that got me totally reevaluating my economic understanding, my understanding of politics, combined with my life experience. So those items, combined with my birth of my son, is what compelled me to take action, because I believe that my life experiences and my outlook and then some of the solutions were going to be better positioned to help here in the first district in Wisconsin, as opposed to putting another career politician in who I saw their decision making and it wasn't putting Americans first.
Right. Yeah, and that seems to be a big problem. Like I told you, for the listeners out there, I don't get political on this show, and if you know that I'm a military guy and I was a police officer and I'm a Christian, you could probably guess which way I lean. But that's not what this show is about. But I think Nick is making some good points here, and he saw a need that needed to be addressed, and he's willing to put himself on the line to address that need. And I want to thank you for, I've also been in public service. I've been on a town board for going to be about a dozen years now, and I've been the chairman for about the past 7. Politics, a lot of times, it's a thankless job. I mean, you do it for the love of your country or the love of your community, but it's a thankless job.
Yes, and you're doing it for the right reasons, right? There are some folks that will get into politics for the wrong reasons.
Oh, absolutely.
But what you're just saying is 100% spot on. You're exactly right.
Well, how do you find that you stay grounded and not let these titles or positions define you? Because I got to be honest, I met you years ago, and I knew you were military, but you're not the kind of guy, and most guys who have done it don't, but you're not the kind of guy that toots his own horn and talks about his service. That's why when I found out a little bit more about you, I was like, wow, I didn't know that about Nick. I'd love to have him on the program and have a talk with him. So how do you stay grounded and not let titles or positions define you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So two quick vignettes. So one of them, again, back to the military. I'm blessed to have some great mentors and to have some folks that taught me the right way to do things when I was young, just first joining, getting to the teams. And then I also got to work with some heroes, fantastic people. Some of them got injured and a variety of other things. But those folks, I look at them like those guys are the heroes. I'm not, and I volunteered for what I did, and I'm blessed to come home. Everything works, and that's on the one hand. And then the second thing is it's hard to get a big ego when you come back from, say, graduate school or or another, long day at work, and your son's ready to play trains.
Yeah.
He doesn't care about anything, right?
That's right.
He's like that, 2-year-old son. Hey, we gonna play trains, Dad? Or, he'll read me a book, and so he's just, Dad. Doesn't matter what I did or didn't do, and so those two things is I think how it helps me to focus on the right thing.
Yeah, I never really thought about it that way, but I would say 4 of the biggest people that keep me humble are my 4 kids. They will point out everything I didn't do right with a smile on their face.
Oh yeah. No
Boy.
filter. No filter.
No, none whatsoever. Especially my kids, and that's because they take after me. I gotta love it.
Oh man.
So let's get a little bit into you talked a little bit about your family. Let's get a little bit to faith and family and healing. What role has faith played in your story during service, after service?
Oh, huge. It's played a big part of my life. You talked earlier about some guys that came home, didn't come home, came home injured, etc. I'm Catholic, so I believe in God's will. He watches over us while we're out there during the day, and also helps to see I'm struggling or trying to resolve situations that to know there's a God out there that's looking out for you, and you can talk to and pray with and ask for wisdom and courage when things are hard.
Yep, absolutely. How has your family handled the ups and downs of your journey? Was there any obstacles you had to overcome from your service and the time you joined until now?
The only challenge is I'm blessed to have a wonderful wife. We've been together for a long time, and she was also former military, so she had a little bit of understanding of the lifestyle. It is hard when you're gone for certain months, several months out of the year, each year, year after year, to have a strong relationship. But we did, again, we're blessed. And then the larger extended family, parents, aunts, uncles, sisters, brothers, etc., we're always real supportive. So we made it through the best we could, and has blocked off time to spend with each other, knowing that longer trips. I would say this, though, it would have been hard had I had my son and still been in the Army. So in a good way, he didn't come till after I got out. I would have had a hard time being gone for several months at a time. And I saw some of the struggles that guys had with younger kids, especially when they were gone for several months at a time. Right? I don't know. I don't know if you had kids when you were active duty or not.
No, I didn't. And it's funny that you mentioned that, because I remember one of my buddies one time when we were over there, he had made some comment about, it's a little harder on me because I have kids. And I said, no, I wasn't acting very Christian at the time, but I said, screw you, dude. I said, I got people at home that care about me too. I said, you're not special because you got kids. Well, that's spoken just like somebody who doesn't have them. So after I had children, a couple years later, I actually called him up and I said, you know what? I'm sorry. I get it now. Now I understand. There is a complete different type of love that you have once you have a child, and you can't even explain it until you have one. So, yeah, no, I completely understand now.
Yeah, I can. That was cool. They did that. Yeah, because it's hard to comprehend, right? I didn't understand. Now I do.
Well, what would you say to a veteran or a first responder, or literally basically anybody who's listening and quietly falling apart, but they're afraid to say it out loud?
I would tell them to put their hand up and ask for help. I'm the Gen X generation, which we're probably the most independent. I think you probably are too, right? Yeah. Where we drank from the hose. We went outside from the time that the sun came up until the light came on.
Yep.
And we had to scrounge for food and things like that. And I am terrible at asking for help or assistance or, hey, I'm struggling with this, that, and the other thing.
As most men are.
I would say ask. Call your friend, call your somebody that cares about you, and just say, hey, this is what's going on, I need some help.
That is sound advice, because what I've found throughout my journey is when you drag heartbreak and lies and just these evil things into the light, they lose their power. But if you keep just sitting there dwelling on them, they're going to consume you. And I've seen throughout these interviews and these podcasts, conversations I've had, I've seen all ends of the spectrum. Guys that have dealt with and healed and are doing great, and guys that are really struggling. I think it's important that guys like you and guys like me and guys that have, I don't want to say have it figured out, but have started figuring it out, reach out and give those people a hand up. Help them out. And I think that's what you do, and that's what I'm trying to do.
I couldn't agree with you more. That the best way I had described to me is once you start verbalizing what's in your head, it's no longer in your head.
Yeah.
Because it's now audible, it's audio, it's out, it's out of that head, and you're talking about it. And no matter what you did in what capacity overseas, I think all of us come home a little bit changed and different. And I didn't realize it for a long time. The discussion, the talking is healing. It's processing things that you may not even knew that needed processing.
Absolutely.
And I've noticed as I've gotten older, things that maybe didn't bother me when I was in my 20s and 30s are now, man, that's interesting. I didn't think about that before. Or, when I was 27 in the middle of doing this, I was like, whatever. Now at mid 40s, it's like, oh man, that's interesting. It's a different way of processing stuff. So I think I didn't think about it so recently, but the talking is helping to heal.
Absolutely. I mean, we've gone through all these generations where men are told, swallow that, push it down, and carry on. Suck it up and drive on. That's what we've been taught. And that's what we did. And there was a time in our lives that needed to happen. We needed to be in survival mode. When you get back home and you're having these problems, that's not the time for it. That's healing mode.
Yeah.
When you look around at our communities right now, what worries you the most?
Well, it's the next generation, the affordability, want my son in particular, our next generation to be able to set up for success and to take advantage of the benefits that this country has. I've been blessed to be an American. And then when you travel and you spend different time in different countries, you really get to see how wonderful this country is and the special, unique people that live here and then the unique culture that we have. And I don't want to lose that.
Yeah.
And I that's one of the things that worries me now is I want him to grow up and stand on my shoulders, just like I got to stand on my father's shoulders. He just got like he stood on his father's shoulders and keep reaching for that dream.
Want him to see America like you grew up seeing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, with all this going on, and you obviously you're heading in the right direction, what gives you hope? What are you seeing now that's happening out that gives you hope?
Well, the hope is the generation that not my son, but the next generation above his. What do they call them? Gen Z now.
Yeah, I'm so proud of Gen Z right now.
Yes, and the youth and their action, what they're doing, where they're going, the way that they're getting involved.
Yeah,
that to me is exciting.
Absolutely, I agree.
In watching and being a part of.
I've run into some Gen Z kids or seeing some of their posts online. I've actually messaged them and said, you know what? I am so proud of you. Gen Z is stepping up. They're stepping up like we haven't seen in generations. They're reaching for Christ. They're trying to be good in their communities instead of going out and doing a lot of the Gen X things that we did. They're actually making me proud. Not that I'm the guy they need to impress, but I'm proud of them anyway.
Yeah, this is a great country, and the hope on that is also how we're going on 250 years now next year.
Mm-hmm.
And no matter what, all the different periods where we've had, I'll just call them crisis periods, whether it's 1920s to 40s, the 1860s, and then when our country was first founded in the 1770s and 80s.
Mm-hmm.
Here we are again, roughly 80 years from the last one of the 1940s, and it's still stuck, right? It's bent, it's stretched, it's been torn, and here we are 250 years later and getting ready to celebrate, and that also gives me hope.
Yep. What's something about you that most people would be surprised to learn?
Ice baths. I'm a fan of ice baths for post-workout.
What's wrong with you?
And then also...
I just turned the heat up in my room because I'm freezing.
Yeah, post-workouts, and then for sanity and then for alertness, I mean, they're fantastic. The colder, the better.
Really? I've actually thought about it. I looked at some of those cheap ones you can get and just fill up. Obviously, we're in Wisconsin. It wouldn't be too hard to keep it cold. During the winter, anyway.
Not in the winter.
Yeah.
Not in the winter. I had to put it on pause in the summer because I have it in the garage. And it just too hot. So now it's getting cold again, so I can start doing it consistently again. Because yeah, it's
I heard there's a lot of benefits to it, though. I've actually thought about it, but then I'd actually have to do it.
You gotta work up to it. You gotta start like 30 seconds, then a minute,
Yeah.
then 2 minutes. That's how you gotta do it. You work into it.
Still sounds chilly. Well, if you could go back and talk to 18-year-old Nick, what would you tell him?
I would tell him to develop that grit. Life is gonna, not to sound too too cheesy, if you will, but life's gonna be difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Keep developing that grit. Keep moving forward. And then if you make mistakes, or when you make mistakes, that often it's not just one mistake, it's continued decisions on top of mistake or a top mistake, which ends up worse off.
Mm-hmm.
So once you've made a decision or been in a situation where it's not what you want to be, stop digging that proverbial hole, reassess, and then move out of that situation.
Yeah. All right, last thing. If you could look straight at the guy or gal listening right now who feels alone, what would you tell them?
I tell them they're not alone. There's a lot of us out here that are there for them, that they just put their hand up or shoot a text message or make a phone call or something, that you're not alone. A lot of people, like you said earlier, willing to hand up.
Mm-hmm.
Hold them up.
So I take it you're traveling a lot this time of year right now with your, well, when's the election?
So the primary is in August. In general is November.
Okay, so you're about a year out.
Yes.
Ooh, got a lot of work to do.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Be a lot of miles on the car.
Yeah, I would imagine. Thank you so much for coming on. I would love to have you on again sometime. We can dig into some different topics about Iraq or about whatever, actually. But thank you for taking the time out of your day to jump on here and talk to Echo Nation.
Oh, you're very welcome, Sam. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure. It's a great show. I love the format, so keep it up.
All right, brother. Thanks again, and I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, thank you. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye. I want to thank Nick for coming on and having an honest conversation today. This is what Echoes Unfiltered is about. Real talk, raw faith, and dealing honestly with the things that we carry. If something in this conversation stirred something up in you, don't ignore it. Healing is possible, and you don't have to walk it alone. If you want to hear more about my story, you can find my book, Echoes from the Sandbox, now on Amazon. Nick, thanks again for being here. Real talk, raw faith, stay unfiltered, and God bless.